Hi everyone, welcome to the session on Theia and how to run it in Eclipse Che. My name is Sven Eftinge.
My name is Node.js.
We work for TypeFox, a small company focusing on tools, language design, language servers, stuff like that. And Theia is yet another next generation Eclipse IDE, something like that. And so in this session we want to lay out like the motivation and also what we have. So there will be a long demo. And then in the end we want to show how it's kind of not meant as a competitor to Eclipse Che, but a piece that will help. So to get started with the motivation, we should have a look at the status quo. And we are in the right community here. So first I want to look at Eclipse, the desktop IDE. It's quite successful. We know that. It has been very successful, and it's kind of declining. And mostly that is because it's written in Java, running a Java UI technology that is really old and no longer supported for years. And we did a lot of different efforts, like implementing SWT differently, like with wrap or with OpenGL and stuff like that. We had experiments with JavaFX, but nothing really seemed to be the right choice. And in general, in Java, I would say UI development is dead. So if you do UIs in Java, I would use HTML, actually. What was and it still is awesome in Eclipse is its extension system, such that we have this ecosystem. You have different extensions. People can build products on it, very different products, which is the reason why we have so many different companies in the Eclipse Foundation being interested in the platform, because they have, it's not only about like the end consumer, the developer, but it's also about building products, engineering products based on this foundation. Then since, I think, 2-3 years, I'm not sure, we have Eclipse Che. I'm explicitly only talking about the Che IDE, so Eclipse Che to me really is two projects. A workspace server with this awesome idea of containerized workspaces that give you, everything you need and all the dependencies in one shot. You start it and you stop it and so on, and you can scale out. And then you have this front end to the workspace, which is the Che IDE. It runs in the browser. And there is not, like, until we discovered the language server protocol, there was nothing that was shared between Eclipse Che and Eclipse. So it's really two different platforms. And if there are users that sometimes prefer workspace development and sometimes desktop development, they have to switch between tools if they want to use both, because Eclipse doesn't run in the browser, Eclipse Che doesn't run in the desktop. And if you are an extension developer, you would have to develop two extensions also. Furthermore, Eclipse Che IDE is also implemented in Java, then cross-compiled to GWT, which is also kind of an old technology with a questionable future. And it makes it really hard to, as a developer, to kind of really leverage the power of the web. And then there's a project that is not at Eclipse, not now, I don't know, which is VS Code from Microsoft. They are very successful. It's a desktop-only thing, but it's written in web technology. It runs on Electron, which is this, it's basically Node and Chromium put together, allows you to build desktop applications, then it allows you to call operating system specific things, has an API for that. The Slack client is built with that. Atom was the original kind of driver for that, the Atom editor. And so this is written in TypeScript, a very nice language that lives in the Java ecosystem and makes it usable somehow for real engineers, I would say. And what VS Code does is it kind of hit a sweet spot between just editors and IDEs. So it is much more feature-rich than traditional text editors in the sense that it has kind of code completion, diagnostics, find references, this stuff. But it doesn't go all the way down that we used to do with Eclipse, like we have a builder, we have the notion of projects, for like with its natures and all this stuff. Because in the end, it's really hard to keep up with the pace of very thriving communities if you copy everything again. And the builder infrastructure in Eclipse is really a complex thing. And also, just think of Maven integration and Gradle integration. It was always kind of hard. And in VS Code, they just don't do it. You just, you have access to a terminal and you just use start command line stuff. And then there are maybe watchers and they integrate nicely, but that's it. So what we think what is needed is I think Eclipse Che is really kind of a good start for next generation Eclipse. But it has this problem with the old technology, and it doesn't run on the desktop, the IDE, and it also doesn't have an extension system like we had in Eclipse. So it's not possible to build an extension, deploy it, allow users to install it easily, and so on. We made some experience with that, and then we decided, no, that's not the basis we see for the future. So we started Theia, and we have the scope for it. First, we want to allow people to write one application in Theia or extensions and run them both in desktop and in browser apps. So we single source extensions and IDEs with that. We want to use like most modern technology that we looked into different ways. It should also be very popular. So it was we were quite clear that we want to use web technology. Then there were kind of stuff that is really cool, like Elk and so on. But we wanted to have something that has also momentum. And TypeScript for sure has a lot of momentum. And then there are other technologies we use there. And then more important also is we really want to embrace this extension model that Eclipse had, just to allow everyone who has Eclipse-based, RCP-based products to have kind of a path forward. You want to migrate there. That's one thing. The other is also by embracing stuff like protocols, language server protocol, and so on. We also want to make it easy to reuse as much code as you have. And so if you look back to the three things I showed you, none of them is an option, and none of them could be shoehorned into this. It was just not possible. We analyzed that, and we didn't find a way. And also, we looked at Orion, we looked at Atom, and so on. It was not an option. So we had to start afresh, but we really built this on important components. So we use Electron as a basis for the desktop app. We use TypeScript, which is really very productive. Actually, yeah, there is the state of the Octoverse, the GitHub report that came out recently. So they said that this year there were almost 4 times as many PRs in TypeScript as last year. So that's quite a good indication, I think. We reuse the Monaco editor. So when you look at the web, there are different options for a rich text editor. Many of you might know Orion, or there is Ace or Code Mirror. And Monaco is the one that is used in VS Code. And that part is reusable in the browser. And we do that. And with that, we already have kind of a very rich component that we don't need to re-implement again. We embrace the language server protocol. So there are today 49 language servers registered. There's a wiki page on language server protocol where you can just say, I have a language server, this is a repo. And there are 49 of them for all kinds of language, Python, Java, R, Ruby, whatnot, Xtex, of course. The debug server protocol is another thing we want to rely on, so that's the same idea. You have a protocol, but you talk to debuggers. Every debugger that runs today in VS Code is using that protocol, so there's quite some things you can reuse. Right, and yeah, so I think it's time for a demo now, so I will hand over to Anton.
Okay, thanks, Stan. Okay, so we've been quite busy implementing new features for Theia, and particularly we work on extension systems that you can compose products from existing extensions. So the whole Theia repository already consists of, like, I know, 15 extensions. Core is just its extension itself, also just a minor part. So here you see package.json. So who did any web development with Node or something like that? Okay, not so many. So in web development, they have kind of plugins, which are packages. And this package JSON file, it's a description. So you can define dependencies. It's other packages which you want to use at runtime. And then you also can define dev dependencies as packages which you want to use during the build time. And actually, each extension is just a Node package. And an application itself is also a Node package, which uses extension packages. So here we have this description, and I want to have Monaco support, navigator, preferences, terminal, TypeScript, and extension manager that I can install extensions at runtime. And then we provide a command line tool to build applications. I already run npm to download these dependencies, so we can just build it. So it's a command line tool called Theia. I can do npx Theia build. Okay, sorry, I should go to my app. So it's my app directory. It only contains Node modules, downloaded dependencies. I can do npx Theia build. And you see it generates some configuration files, like for packaging, and we'll produce an application in several seconds. So it took like 6 seconds. And then I can start. So the important point, now I'm going to build a product from extensions which you already have. And then with that product, I will develop an extension which belongs to my extension folder. So I will start npx Theia start my extension folder. And it's starting an Electron-based application with extensions which are listed. So as you see, there is a Monaco editor. There should be TypeScript support. So if I open some TypeScript file, I can hover over. It shows me documentation. We have outline. We can also use quick outline to look up symbols, like my extension common contribution. You can navigate somewhere to libraries, see where references are used. So we go back. Yeah, we also have a terminal, so I can create a new one. We will need it to build our extension. And then we have this extension tab on the left-hand side. So it's extension manager. And its internet is not so good here. I hope it would work. Come on. Okay. Yeah, okay, let's then skip to. So what I wanted to show is that I will install Git extension and use it, but unfortunately I cannot. Okay, so then we can go to the part where we develop an extension with our product. So this repo is a typical setup for extension developer. It's a mono repo, meaning that it can consist of several Node packages. The most important package here is my extension. And as each package has a package.json file, it's here. Here, like, everything is very traditional to Node world. So if you know how to do Node development, you know the content of this file. The only special things here is keyword, because we use it to look up. So like, you can publish each Node package to npm, and we will use this keyword to find Node packages which are Theia extensions. And then there's a Theia extension section where, so for building extensions, we use dependency injection framework, which is written in TypeScript and calls Investify.js. It's very similar like to Juice, who use it from you. And here you basically provide container models, which are configuration for containers for different targets. So this extension particularly provides configuration for frontend, meaning that bindings exposed by this container model will be used in a browser or browser frontend in desktop. They are also targets like backend and then frontend, backend, Electron frontend, Electron backend. So we can go to this model, and you see we have this container model, and it provides contributions for commands and menus. So like as in every IDEs in Eclipse, we also have this abstract function which can be called by user, which is a command, and then you can provide implementation, which is a handler, and menu items. So you can go there, and you see that here we create a command, show some message, and we register it in our command contribution, and we register a handler for hello world. One of the goals for us was that you have really nice experience to develop. So like really you can change something, refresh the page, and you get the changes. So I will start it in special mode now, in watching, meaning that I do incremental builds of my extension. So I can do it here and watch. So it's starting watching of my extension. If I change something, it will automatically repackage application. And then I want to use another terminal where I start, let's say, browser app. So there are two more packages, except extensions, browser app and Electron app, that you can try out your extension. And we can start a browser app. Another one, so it's already kind of the third Theia which you see today. Yeah. So we go to browser. Oh, come on. Okay, so we got our Theia, a new instance running with our extension, and we have shown a message. So when I press it, it shows hello world. And we can go back now, and let's change handler, so implementation of our command. Also, when I change, you see that like we have already problem markers, it contains hover and so on. So let's set our command, and I'm just going to greet you here at EclipseCon with a new message. So this message service info greetings at EclipseCon Europe 2017. And then when I change, if you go to terminal with watching, you see that it was, okay, there's still some errors. Missing braces. Okay, so it's rebuilding. My extension is also already repackaged, and if I go back to the browser, I can just refresh it, find our command, and here you go. So the logical conclusion will be that you also can now publish it to NPM, then to go to extension manager when you have, to the extension UI when you have internet, you can search for your extension and install it. We have already a tutorial on it, on after extensions. Okay, here. So if you go to Theia repository, you can find it, and you can try it at home and then come at us and say that you need some help or it doesn't work. Yeah, so thank you. I will hand over back to.
By the way, if you have questions, just we can discuss anything anytime. So next up, I would just give you a rough overview of the architecture, what you saw. It is a bit simplified. So basically what you see when you look at Theia is you have two applications. You have one, a front-end application, that's what runs in the browser, and a back-end application, that is what, you know, gets you information from the file system or the language server stuff and so on. In reality, it must not be one back-end application. So if you think about containers and so on, you could have microservices, each in different containers, They usually should share the same file system, so you would start one pod with these containers sharing one file system. They connect through JSON RPC. It's not, I mean, you can also use REST, but we want to have two-way communication, and we have some very small communication framework that allows us to just write down TypeScript interfaces, and then we have type communication between front end and back end. We can send JSON messages back and forth. So we get notifications, as you saw in Anton's demo, when he started the build, you saw in the navigator how the files pop up. That's file watch change events. So then we have basically three different modes in mind. One is you start the backend on some system. It can be your local system, but it can also be something in a Docker container being remote. And then you have a front end that is, of course, local in the browser. The next one is the Electron, the local version, where you start basically the backend locally and open an Electron window, and it is the same communication and so on. Through the dependency injection mechanism, we override some bindings in the Electron version just to really make use of the Electron-specific API to interact with the operating system, like file drag stuff and so on. You can do on Electron, but not in the browser. And then the third thing is you start an Electron app locally that runs the front end, but the back end still runs remotely. So you still have a native desktop app connected to a remote automated Docker workspace. Okay, so next thing is, what about Che and Theia? So I said in the beginning, Che is two projects, the workspace server, actually three. The workspace server, the dashboard that is the user interface for the workspace server, and the Che IDE. And what we want to do is we want to allow to, alternatively to the Che IDE, just start Theia. And so to make that happen, we have to look at like how does it work now and what do we need to change. When you start a workspace, you do it with a dashboard and you say start a workspace server, and it actually more or less does two things. The workspace server starts the workspace, but then the dashboard immediately starts the IDE, because the IDE is not specific to a workspace. It runs in the same kind of main server, which is nice in that case because you can open it immediately, and then the user sees all the feedback through the terminals. So the starting of the workspace takes some time. Also, Che installs agents and so on, and then you have the IDE immediately, but you don't have a file system yet because that's not there, but you get terminals and you see the feedback. The bad thing about that is it's a bit harder to have different IDEs for different workspaces. So I start a TypeScript workspace, I might want to have a different configuration than when I start a data science workspace. And the other is also, it's a bit kind of coupled. So, yeah. And what we try to do is in telling the dashboard somehow to not open the Che IDE, but open a service that got started in a Docker image together with a workspace. And for that, we basically need to patch the dashboard. And we did that for CodeEnvy, because for Che it didn't make sense so far, because so far it didn't support multi-user and Docker Swarm or Kubernetes support. But now that's different. So Red Hat announced in June, I think, that they are moving all the cool features from CodeEnvy to Che. And as far as I know, the current release, 5.19, has a multi-user support, but not the Kubernetes support. Is that correct, Brad? So we should wait for 6 to get this Kubernetes and multi-user support still. Yeah. Yeah, I heard something like end of year, around, yeah, okay. Good. So, okay, there's a session 2:30. Stefan is giving us an update on J6. Yeah. All right, so what we did instead of using J is we used CodeNV and patched that because CodeNV also was made open source in June, July around. And we just wanted to kind of use that for a product we are working on. And I can give you a short demo for that. With my computer, because Anton's computer never has internet. Not only here. All right. So we branded it a bit because it's for a product. It's a data science IDE. But the main thing I want to show you here is just like it can be done, right? So you have just the regular workspaces, and for instance, if I start one, so this is a place where oh, you don't see anything. Thanks for telling me. One sec. Why is that? Better. So now you see it. Good. Actually, I wanted to show how it starts. So I stop this one. Oh, it's stopped already. Okay. So what we had to, it's still not super nice, we have to work on that, but we had to reinstall an old kind of progress thing that they had at some point in time, like 2 years ago. We had to reinstall it there. It's still used somewhere in the factory's place, so we put it there so you get feedback. When you start a workspace, there's stuff going on, as I said before. Che starts the IDE immediately and gives you feedback. If you want to start something else, you don't get feedback. You will have it, nothing, and that's not really nice. So you want to at least see, okay, there's something going on. Right, and then, yeah, this IDE is called Ride. It's also written TypeScript. Also, a lot of the technology we use in Theia is common with this. I can open this workspace. It has even files. So also here we have like the Monaco editor. And yeah, you can even like execute stuff right in here. So it works. You can do J with other IDEs for sure. And we already discussed with Red Hat, with the J team, how we can kind of make that work in general for the J workspaces. So I'm pretty optimistic that's something we will align and work on together. Yeah. All right. Back to your machine. No, I have slides. I can do it also here. That's fine. So to wrap up and leave some time for questions and discussions, there will be a beta release of Theia in December 6. It has what Anton already showed, this extension system that really allows you to write extension easily, publish them, consume them. It has Git support in the sense that you can author Git commits, so you see the changes, you can have diff editors, and then you can commit. It has also basic commands like fetch and such things. It fully supports the language server protocol, so all the features are basically supported, and we have so far wrapped, I think, 6, 7 languages, but it's something like 2 hours or so to wrap a language server in a Theia extension, because it takes 2 hours, because you have to also define the syntax coloring lexing stuff that is not part of the language server protocol. But it's quite fast, and then you will have like anything. So far we have Python, Java, TypeScript, JavaScript, Go, C, C++, so there is a language server for C, C++ that the Ericsson folks work together with the Clang team on. Yeah, you can have many more. Just look at the list on the GitHub. So preferences, you have user preferences. The preference actually is a good use case for the multi-microservice thing, because if you have a workspace server with user information and so on, you don't want to copy a preference file to the user home in a Docker image. You just want to connect to the real server, right? That's why sometimes a backend can also be multiple processes. Markers, you saw that. Command palette, you saw that. And there are many more small features that really, like, we want to focus on being able to develop Theia with Theia, like what Anton showed. Right, and then it's open source. It's at the moment, I think we have 19 contributors.
Already 20.
20 already. So every day, one more. There, yeah, a lot of CDT developers from Ericsson are involved, so they take care of the debugging story and so on. Us from Typefox are involved, and if you want to get involved, we will be very happy and welcoming. So with that, I think we have some time left for questions. Yeah, that's good. Are there any questions? Yes?
For Theia and Che, do you see the Git support coming from Theia or Che?
For Theia and Che, the Git support, whether it comes from Theia or Che, no, it comes from the backend. There will be a Git executable, and then there is a graphical front end that uses that. And that will run in the IDE, so that would be Theia. Yeah. Yeah? Let me rephrase. So you say the scope, you understood the scope of Theia is to be an IDE rather than a good code editor like VS Code, and whether we want to enhance our navigator to allow different views on the file structure. So the first thing is marketing. It's also scope for sure, but I would not kind of say this is IDE or this is not. I mean, what is find references? Is that IDE or not? I don't know. I think it's useful. That's important. So, and there's useless stuff that we've developed in the past in Eclipse, and we figured out, oh, that's really like a duplicate effort. It's done like on the command line, and we do it here again, and so on. For the navigator, if it's considered useful, I'm open. Like, I personally don't use it, but again, it's based on extension. So ultimately, we don't need to kind of have everything in the core and make kind of unified decisions. Yeah, I agree. We should have make a clear scope of what we like and what not, and so on. But there's no, in VS Code you can't build such an extension. because the extension mechanism is so limited. In Theia, you can. Yeah? Is Theia already an Eclipse project? No, not yet. But we hope to change that soon. Pardon? Louder, please. License. Currently, the license is Apache 2. And when it goes to Eclipse, it will be a very not EPL, maybe EPL also, but also something like a BSD3, and so very, very flexible license. Another question? If you have more questions, we have a booth out there, so just come along, we can chat, give more demos and so on. Thank you, have fun at the conference.